Coffee with Don, tea with Don. I just have to think of it that way.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you're gonna. It's just a chat.
Afternoon tea with Don.
A fireside chat. Hey there, welcome everyone back to Goway's studio, which you can see is our training room. Today I'm here with Alice, one of our top salespeople in the company. He's been with the company for quite a while and is a specialist in pretty much all destinations. But today we're going to talk about a recent trip that Alice did to Uganda and visiting the gorillas. So on that point, Alice, of your tenure here at Goway, how many years have you been at Goway?
I've been at Goway now for 19 years, Don.
Wow.
It just, actually the 19th anniversary just passed last Thursday on the 18th.
Wow.
So yeah, 19 years, yeah, it's a long time.
It is, yeah.
Time
So I do
flying.
remember when I started, Alice was already here. I've been here now 17 years, so you've got two veterans here. And as I mentioned, over that time, you started in the Down Under. From your accent, you're obviously from Australia originally, correct?
I'm from Sydney, Australia,
Yeah.
but previously I was in business banking, so I
okay.
didn't originally come from a travel industry background, and it was just travel's a passion of mine, so it just ended up that I happened to be doing it as a job now, so it worked out well.
How did you end up in Canada?
I followed my husband here, and
Is he Canadian?
Yep, he's
Canadian.
Canadian.
Okay.
Yep. So been here 19 years as well.
Right, so you got the job when you came?
Got the job when I came to Canada.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So did you, because you came from Australia, did you start in our Down Under South Pacific department when you started selling with us?
Exactly.
Right.
I got hired for my accent.
Hired for your accent.
Yeah.
It does have its benefits.
It had to come in handy at some
exactly.
point. Yeah.
And then over those 19 years, you've expanded from Down Under, because obviously you were just in Africa, so you sell Africa, you sell some Latin America as well. So basically all our destinations?
Yeah,
or?
I cross over in certain areas, but I have traveled to Peru, Iceland, a bit of South Africa and Kenya as well as all the South Pacific region.
Because here at Goway, the way we structure ourselves is we have destination specialists who generally sell one region only, but we do have a handful, well, it's a large handful of crossover sellers like Alice, who will cross over into other areas. So your first destination is Down Under.
Yeah, the South Pacific.
Yeah, and then what would be your secondary?
Africa would be my second. Yeah.
Okay, perfect segue. So on that point, you were just in Uganda with the final goal of seeing the gorillas, which you did, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So how did you end up in Uganda? Because this is one of the first staff travel we've had since COVID. I never say over, but since it's starting to get back to normal. Alice, Queenie, and a few other people went over to Uganda.
It was just Alice. It was just B and Queenie, and
just
we
you
were
and
on
Queenie?
two separate trips.
Oh, okay. I thought there was more of you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we weren't even on the same trip.
All right.
So it's just very small groups. I think there were only 5 people on mine.
So there was you and other people from the industry traveling with you?
That's right.
So
And that took place in May. We actually got the invitation in February. So it really was just coming right out of COVID.
yeah, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So as part of that, because Alice did a really good training session for our internal staff when she came back, one thing that I learned as well as I said, the final goal was seeing the gorillas, but en route, you also went and saw the chimpanzees. So what was that like? Because that was unexpected. Like, I know it could be done, but I didn't expect it to be on that particular trip, and look really good.
Yeah, you kind of forget about that. Usually it's the gorillas are the focal point of anyone's trip to Uganda, but definitely the chimps, it's an exciting wildlife encounter. They're a lot more active than the gorillas, so you can see them climbing up the trees, swinging around the forest canopies. They could be ambling right beside you on the ground. You do get a limit of 1 hour with them, and I was lucky enough to see them just sitting there, either relaxing in the trees or just sitting there, with their families or in pairs, grooming each other, which they like to do. And it's just great to just be able to observe that.
Now the chimps, do you need to purchase a permit to see the chimps like you do for the gorillas?
Absolutely.
And you have to book ahead for the chimp ones as well?
Yes, well in advance.
Well in advance for both?
For sure, for both.
Right.
These things can sell up to a year in advance even.
Really?
Especially coming out of COVID as well, because things are being pushed back. So these things, especially for Africa, you need to, it's a leeway definitely of going up to a year in advance.
So at least a year for chimps and gorillas.
Plus there's a limit too. You're going in small groups of 6 for the chimps. So, I mean, there are extra permits for other groups that day, but in your group, there'll only be 6 permits for that particular group.
Now, are there any rules and regulations? Well, we'll touch on the gorillas, but for the chimps, I assume it's very similar. From the training you mentioned, you have to wear a mask.
You do have to wear a mask.
Right.
Prior to COVID, you didn't have to, but they were still very wary of, bringing in illnesses into the chimps and the environment. So they do, health checks, and you do have to wear a mask as well.
And apart from that, there's no physical interaction with the chimps unless they approach you.
That's
of course.
right.
Yeah.
There is no physical interaction. You have to stand at a certain distance from them and just observe them that way. You're not supposed to mimic them or try and communicate with them or provoke them.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because they are quite noisy and they're always screeching and
They don't want you screeching back.
They don't want you screeching back and
Fair
trying to communicate and pretending to be part of them. Yeah.
Now, to see the chimps, is there much of a trek, or is it like walk into a forest area and there they are?
It's fairly flat terrain and pretty easy to just walk around in, but later on when they're actually approaching them, you may actually kind of be like, as they say, tracking them. You'll be chasing them down almost, and you could be going through, brambles and thick vegetation, and so it's always best to be fully clothed and not just be wearing, shorts and t-shirts and things, because it's hot, it's humid. The logical thing would just be to put on something light, but no, you want to be fully covered up in the event.
And I assume that's the same for the gorillas as well.
And that's the same for the
probably
gorillas
more so because it's
you
more.
have to, the weather's also unpredictable. It could be raining as well, so they say to bring a raincoat and be fully covered with long pants and everything like that.
Now, before we get down to the actual gorillas, the other thing I learned through your training session as well, which we've all built into a brand new LMS module, which is our Goway Pro Travel Academy module on the gorillas. So all this information and more is in the new module. Is it getting to the chimps and then from the chimps? So the chimps are sort of west of Kampala, correct? In general terms?
They are in Kibale National Park.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you head south to where the gorillas are, right in the bottom corner where it borders with Rwanda. But en route, there are some safari experiences very similar, if not equal to Kenya and Tanzania. Is that a fair statement?
Like Queen Elizabeth National Park, and then you've got the Kazinga Channel. Yeah, Queen Elizabeth National Park is huge.
Right.
So you've got different areas where you can view, do wildlife sightings, and you can stay in safari camps and do safari game drives there, much like in South Africa and East Africa.
Right, so you could have a true African experience by seeing the gorillas, staying in Uganda, and still seeing, maybe not the big five, but seeing all the expected larger game in Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Elephants, hippos, and
giraffe.
Yeah.
And the rest. Okay. Okay, so getting to the meat of it, the gorillas. You mentioned, just jumping back a bit. So the permits for the chimps are how much?
The 200 USD per person.
And for the gorillas?
The gorillas are 700 USD.
That's in Uganda. 700 in Uganda. In Rwanda, they are?
In Rwanda, they're 1,500.
1,500, right.
So
we're jumping ahead a bit here, but what would be the difference trekking the gorillas in Rwanda versus Uganda?
So you're going to get the same experience, and you could be getting the same in terms of the trekking conditions are going to be very similar too.
Okay.
So you could expect, it could be 1 hour, it could be 3 to 4 hours in terms of your trekking. It just depends on the day, where the families are.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because within the park, now again, the gorillas move across the border, as in they know no borders. So one family might be on the Ugandan side one day or 1 week, and the next week they're on the Rwandan side. So talking Uganda, because that's where your experience was. So when you arrive into the area, now I understand it's a day trip like the chimps. You have to have a day aside to visit the gorillas. So you'd arrive the day before naturally, and therefore accommodation would be something to be considered. I understand there's accommodation outside the park and 2 or 3 inside the park. Is that correct?
There's 2 inside the park. We've got Bahoma Lodge as well as Sanctuary, the Gorilla Forest Sanctuary, which is like a tented camp.
Right.
So only 10 rooms in each of these places. So, you're limited. There's Bawindi Lodge just outside the gates. And all of these you can walk to park headquarters.
Right.
So all really close by,
And even the ones that aren't either outside the gate, inside the park, they're still very close to the entrance.
You're literally talking about, 3 to 5 minutes drive.
Right, okay. So it doesn't matter where you stay.
It's all
an
very
easy
convenient, and they're all situated in spectacular settings, sweeping views of the forest. Yeah.
But I would assume that the lodges inside the camp, because they're smaller as well, would, like the permits themselves, book out well in advance. So again, booking ahead is key.
We're talking about 10 rooms in these places as well. And
Yeah,
if you're lucky enough, you can even see the gorillas from the lodge.
Beautiful, because I believe there's a video out on YouTube which you can look up, and it's in our training module too, of a gentleman in that lodge, and a troop come through, and he gets caught, so to speak, and they just mill around him, and the silverback sits right behind. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Oh, you
seen
haven't
that.
seen it? I
But
better
no,
send it to
there
you.
is a family, and you're dining, you're having lunch and dinner, and you can see like some of the baby gorillas up in the trees.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay.
so there is a family, I believe, that's very close by.
Oh yeah, okay. This might be the same family then. So that begs sort of the next question of how long does it take to trek to see the gorillas? Now, obviously, you just mentioned you can sometimes see them from where you eat, but that's not the norm. I would assume that there is some trekking involved in almost every encounter. And my understanding is it can be anywhere from half an hour, if you're lucky, to maybe 2 or 3 hours before you see the gorillas. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I had there was some girls that were staying in our lodge. They just walked like down from park headquarters about 20 minutes and turned left, and they saw a family right there. But for me, yeah, it was about 1.5 hours of a trek. And you're going through, we started at a village. We drove to a point, which was about 40 minutes out, walk through a village, tea plantations before you get to the forest edge. And then that's where things start getting, in terms of the vegetation, it's thicker and...
Getting a little Indiana Jones.
Steep inclines, you're dealing with more physical things, high humidity and things like that. That's where the porter comes in handy.
Yeah, which is something I learned again through your training, that porters are on hand to be hired, and you highly recommend those because, as Alice is pointing out, like the trekking is difficult, or can be difficult, and depending on your physical capabilities, the porter will carry pretty much all your stuff. Is that, yeah?
The porter will carry whatever day pack you bring, and you can put, your 2 water bottles in there. They suggest you put how many liters in there with your, your rain jacket. You're kind of dressing for all kinds of weather. It could be sunny when you start off, but it could be bucketing down in the middle of. So you want to just prepare for all those kind of conditions, and so. He will carry that for you. It costs about $20. You're supporting the local community as well.
Even better, yep.
Providing employment for them. And they'll also, hold your hand, give you a boost up. Yeah, it's good because then you can just focus on where you're stepping, where you're walking. You've got your walking stick, and it's just easier to concentrate on that then.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair statement because, again, it's a much harder trek, but the Inca Trail has porters naturally. But I always found that having that burden taken off you, no matter how fit you are or think you are, because it's probably a once in a lifetime event, you really don't want to be burdened with stuff you don't need to be burdened with. And for the cost of $20, providing local employment, it's a no-brainer to me as well.
Exactly,
So, yeah.
And they said that day pack could weigh nothing, but after 1 hour, it could be like 5 minutes, it's fine, but after 1 hour uphill,
it weighs a bit more.
It weighs a bit more.
Yeah. So like the chimps, I assume you have to wear a mask for the gorilla encounter.
You do have to wear a mask. They're actually a little bit more strict. You have to wear a mask while you're trekking, and then you have to change to a fresh one when you actually get to the area where you're going to do your encounter.
Right, so I can imagine that trekking in those conditions with a mask on is pretty, I don't want to say inconvenient because if you have to do it, you have to do it, but
yeah,
is there a bit of leniency when you're trekking? Like I know when you meet them, it must go on, end of story.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there is. It ends up being like a little chin strap, which gets really sweaty, and then people are like taking it off. But that's the thing. That's the kind of conditions you're dealing with, right? Yeah, high humidity and heat and elevation and things like that.
But again, when you get to the gorillas, it's non-negotiable. Mask goes on.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And the same rules. You can't interact with the gorillas, but if they come towards you, under your guide's supervision as such.
That's right. You're staying a certain distance from them, and you're allowed your camera. You're not even taking in your backpack or anything. You leave all that with your porters, and you're only taking what you need in with you for that 1 hour.
Which would be water and camera, I guess.
Maybe water, but just water and camera.
The camera, the main thing.
Yeah.
So, having done this forever ago, I know for me personally, it was just the most amazing experience seeing the gorillas. So, your view on it. Like,
Absolutely.
how did you feel about it?
You know that there's only 1,000 gorillas left on the planet. You can only do this in 3 countries. You definitely feel very privileged.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a surreal moment to, be there with a silverback and with his family, and it's definitely an unforgettable experience.
Yeah, it definitely, again, I did it forever ago, as I mentioned, and it was much cheaper, much more rustic, but still the encounter with something that is so human-like, and I can't remember the exact amount, but the DNA is so small difference between us. It's, it's...
As opposed to seeing it, in a zoo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then seeing it, in real life, it's a highly endangered species, and it's just, you're lucky.
Yeah, that's a good word. Like, you're lucky to get there. Most people only do it once. I'm hoping to go back to do it a second time at some stage. But the one time I did it, like, it stuck with me for all these years, as probably will with you as well.
And that's why we always recommend to get the second permit too. So
okay, so how does that work? So that's like because you can't do it twice in the same day. You would go back the next day?
You go back the next day. You can opt for another permit, and you just pay for that. Hopefully it's available. You book that well in advance too.
Is it any cheaper buying it there on that next day, or it's still the same price regardless?
No, it's still the same price, and you run the risk of not being able to do it. So you have to do it, at the same time. I always just tell my clients, just book it.
Book it now?
Book it, yeah. Like, if you've got that extra night at the lodge where you've got the next day for other activities, I just book it.
Right, so like, everyone's different, but I think I could speak for Alice here that if this is something you've dreamed about your lifetime, the cost of doing it a second day is worth it. Like, because again, you probably won't get back again, so why not?
Exactly, well worth it.
Yeah, so if it's a focal point of your trip.
And I find that most clients don't even think about it.
Oh, really?
It's like, it's a no-brainer. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, or for the second permit, you might have to travel a fair distance for that if the permits for the Bahoma area is not available.
Okay, so the permits are sold based on area, not just the park.
That's right.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. Yeah. Well, that's really it about the gorillas. It's quite a simple process. The key points here would be booking well in advance, particularly now, as COVID's ending and travel is going crazy. And also, if it's the dream destination or the dream encounter, buy the second ticket when you book originally, because you can't be guaranteed buying it locally in the country, correct? Yep.
Yeah, and the best times to go are during the dry seasons.
Okay, which is
December to February, as well as June through to August, September. But don't be put off by going, during the rainy season, which is when I went, because I got a perfectly sunny day.
Right.
So it's the tropics.
It's the tropic, it's the mountains.
It could bucket down, for an hour, 2 hours at a certain point, but the rest of the day will be sunny.
Right.
It did rain the afternoon prior to my gorilla trek. So that's the thing, you've got to be wary of, trekking conditions and, muddy terrain and things like that. And that's where the porter comes in handy and carrying a pack. So you can just focus.
And carrying you, maybe.
yeah, exactly.
So I guess the last thing to talk about, a little bit of logistics. There are no direct flights from North America into Uganda, correct? So you're normally going via Middle East or Europe?
Europe, yeah. Dubai or Europe, I went via Amsterdam.
Okay, and then into Kampala.
Yeah.
Do your Uganda experience primarily by land, though there are light aircraft that can get you around the country as well.
Exactly.
Which can fly almost to the gate of the national park. Now, if you wanted to connect into Tanzania or Kenya, is that easy from Uganda as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you can fly internationally, but there might be some land transfers as well. But again, it is quite common to do the East Africa with the mountain gorillas.
Yeah, from Entebbe to Nairobi, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just wanted to show that when you do complete your trekking, you get a little certificate at the end for your trip, and so you do feel proud and accomplished.
I'm sure
that you did something.
And of course,
it is physical.
Yes,
both are quite physical. So yeah, you do feel accomplished at the end.
Very good. And of course, you come back with lots of great memories and lots of photos, I'm sure.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, that's it. Short, sharp and sweet on the mountain gorillas of Uganda and Rwanda. We just touched on Uganda, but again, as Alice mentioned, the experience in Rwanda is very, very similar. The biggest additional thing you could do in Rwanda is, of course, you can visit the museum about the genocide, and of course, you can visit Dian Fossey's grave, who was one of the original protectors of the mountain gorillas. If you've ever seen the movie Mountains, Gorillas in the Mist. I think.
On December 16th, 1966, Diane Fossey left a life of comfort and privilege and went alone into the mountains of Africa.
Some of them believe a woman living alone up there has to be mad.
She was determined to make contact with the wild mountain gorillas and save them from extinction. Someone wanted her stopped.
Diane Fossey, she's buried on the Rwandan side as well. So other than that, I'd like to thank Alice for her time today.
Thank you.
If you have any questions about anything, you can reach out to myself or Alice or anyone here at Goway, and we're more than happy to help you with any trips around the world, but particularly to the mountain gorillas in Uganda or Rwanda. Thanks everyone, see you next time. Easy peasy.